Hello class, today we'll be reading chapters 28 and 29 of The Chocolate War. He handed the ball off to Wilmette, slapping it into his belly, and then hung in there, waiting for Carter to lunge through the line. The play called for Jerry to hit Carter low and send him toppling, an assignment Jerry didn't relish. Carter was easily 50 pounds heavier, and he was used by the coach to keep the freshman squad on their toes. But the coach always said, "Doesn't matter how big the body, it's what you do with it." Now Jerry waited for Carter to emerge from the jungle of skirmishing bodies as Wilmette plunged off tackle. And there he was, like a freight train on the loose, out of control, rampaging wildly, trying to careen towards Gilmet, but too late. Jerry leaped towards him, low, aiming for that vulnerable territory of the knees, the target pinpointed by the coach. Carter and Jerry collided like a street accident. Colored lights whirled, 4th of July on an October afternoon. Jerry felt himself lunging towards the ground, arms and legs askew, all mixed up with Carter's arms and legs. There was exhilaration in the collision, the honest contact of football, not as beautiful maybe as a completed pass or a fake that threw your opponents off balance, but beautiful nevertheless, and manly, prideful. The good, damp smell of the grass, the earth, rushed into Jerry's nostrils, and he let himself be carried on the waves of the sweet moment, knowing he'd carried out his assignment. Get Carter. He glanced up to see Carter raising himself in astonishment, shaking his head. Jerry grinned as he got to his feet. Suddenly, he was struck from behind, a vicious blow to his kidneys, sickening in its impact. His knees caved in, and he sank to the ground again. As he attempted to turn around to find out who had attacked him, another blow landed, someplace, and Jerry felt himself hurling off balance to the ground. He felt his eyes watering, tears spilling onto his cheeks. He looked around and saw the fellows getting into position for the next play. "Come on, Renaud," the coach called. He got to one knee, then managed to stand on both feet. The pain was subsiding, translating now into a dull, spreading ache. Come on," the coach urged, irritated as usual. Jerry made his way tenderly towards the lineup. He thrust his head and shoulders into the huddle, considering what play he should call next, but a part of him was not concerned with the play or the game. He lifted his head and scanned the field, as if he were figuring out what to do next. Who had assaulted him that way? Who hated him so much that he'd racked him up so viciously? Not Carter. Carter had been in full view. But who else? Anybody. Could have been anybody. From his own team, maybe. "You okay?" somebody inquired. Jerry plunged into the huddle again, called his own number, a run keep. At least if he carried the ball, he'd be in full view of everyone and not as vulnerable to a sneak attack. "Let's go," he said, putting juice into the words, letting them all know that he was fine, great, ready for action. He found that his rib cage ached when he walked. Lining up behind the quarterback, Jerry raised his eyes again, sweeping the players. Somebody was trying to wipe him out. "Give me eyes behind my head," he prayed as he barked the signals. The telephone rang as he inserted the key in the front door. Turning the key swiftly, he flung the door open and tossed his books on the chair in the hallway. The ringing went on unendingly, a lonely sound in the empty apartment. Finally, he grabbed it off the wall. "Hello?" Silence, not even a dial tone. Then out of the silence, a faint sound from a distance, getting closer like someone chuckling privately at a secret intimate joke. "Hello?" Jerry said again. The chuckle was louder now. An obscene phone call? Only girls got those, didn't they? Again, that chuckle, more defined and louder, but still somehow intimate and suggestive. A chuckle that said, "I know something you don't know." "Who is this?" Jerry asked. And then the dial tone, like a fart in his ear. That night at 11 o'clock, the telephone rang again. Jerry figured it was his father. He was working the late shift at the drugstore. He lifted the receiver and said hello. No response, no sound at all. He wanted to hang up, but something made him hold the instrument in his ear, waiting. The chuckle again. It was weirder than 3 o'clock this afternoon. The night, the darkness outside, the apartment riddled with lamplight shadows seemed more menacing. Forget it, Jerry told himself. It always seems worse at night. "Hey, who is this?" he asked, the sound of his voice restoring normalcy. Still the chuckle, almost evil in its quiet mockery. "This some creep? Some flaky nut? Some stupid jerk?" Jerry asked. "Draw him out. Make him angry." The chuckle turned into a hoot of derision. Then the dial tone again. He seldom kept anything of value. in his locker. The school was notorious for borrowers, kids who weren't exactly thieves but walked off with anything that wasn't nailed down or locked up. No sense buying a lock. It would be busted in the first day. Privacy was virtually non-existent at Trinity. Most of the kids didn't give a damn or have any respect for the rights of others. They rummaged desks, pried lockers open, sifted through books on a perennial search for loot, money, pot, books, watches, clothing, anything. The morning after that first night phone call, Jerry opened his locker and shook his head in disbelief. His poster had been smeared with ink or some kind of blue paint. The message had been virtually obliterated. "Do I dare disturb the universe?" was now a grotesque jumble of unconnected letters. It was such a senseless, childish act of vandalism that Jerry was more awed than angered. Who does such a crazy thing? Looking down, he saw that his new gym sneakers had been slashed, the canvas now limp shreds, rag-like. He'd made the mistake of leaving them there overnight. Ruining the poster was one thing, a gross act, the work of the animal, and all schools had animals, even Trinity. But there was nothing prankish about ruining the sneakers. That was deliberate. Somebody sending him a message. Telephone calls, that attack on the football field, now this. He closed the locker quickly so no one could see the damage. For some reason, he felt ashamed. He'd been dreaming of a fire, flames eating unknown walls, and the siren sounded. And then it wasn't a siren, but the telephone. Jerry scrambled from his bed. In the hallway, his father was slamming the receiver down on the hook. "Something funny's going on around here." The grandfather clock chimed twice. Jerry didn't have to blink the sleep from his eyes. He was wide awake, chilled, the floor cold beneath his feet. "Who was it?" he asked. Although he knew, of course. "Nobody," his father answered, disgusted. "Same thing happened last night about this time. But it didn't wake you up. Some nut on the other end of the line, laughing away like it's the biggest joke in the world." He reached out and tousled Jerry's hair. "Go back to sleep, Jerry. There are all kinds of nuts running around loose." It was hours before Jerry fell into a strange, dreamless sleep. "Renault?" Brother Andrew called. Jerry looked up. He'd been immersed in his new art project, copying a 2-story house in order to learn perspective. A simple exercise, but he loved the ordered lines, the neatness, the stark beauty of planes and angles. "Yes, brother?" "Your watercolor, the landscape assignment." "Yes." Puzzled. The watercolor, which was a major project, had taken a week of painstaking work, simply because Jerry was not at his best in free art. He was more at ease with formal or geometric designs where the composition was well defined, but the watercolor would count for 50% of his mark this semester. "Today's the final day for handing it in," the brother said. "I don't find yours here." "I put it on your desk yesterday," Jerry said. "Yesterday?" Brother Andrew asked, as if he'd never heard of yesterday. He was a fastidious, precise man who ordinarily taught math, but had been filling in for the regular art teacher. "Yes, sir," Jerry said firmly. Eyebrows arched. The brother looked through the pile of drawings on the desk. Jerry sighed quietly in resignation. He knew that Brother Andrew wouldn't find the drawing there. He wanted to run, to scan the faces of the kids in the class, to find that one kid who'd be gloating in satisfaction. "Hey, you're getting paranoid," he told himself. "Who'd sneak in here and remove your drawing? Who'd watch so closely that they'd even know you submitted the drawing yesterday?" Brother Andrew looked up. "To use a cliché, Renault, we are locked on the horns of a dilemma. Your landscape is not here. Now either I have lost it, and I do not make a habit of losing landscapes." The teacher paused here, as if, incredibly, he expected a laugh, and incredibly, the laugh did come. "Or your memory is faulty." "I handed it in, brother," firmly, without panic. The teacher looked steadily into Jerry's eyes. Jerry saw the honest doubt there. "Well, no, perhaps I do make a habit of losing landscapes after all," he said. Jerry felt a rush of camaraderie for the teacher. "At any rate, let me check further. Perhaps I left it in the teacher's lounge." For some reason, this remark also provoked laughter, and even the teacher joined in. It was late in the period and late in the day, and everyone needed to relax, let down, take it easy. Jerry wanted to look around to see whose eyes gleamed with triumph over the missing watercolor. "Of course, Renault, as sympathetic as I am, if I do not find the landscape, then I must fail you this semester." Jerry opened his locker. The mess was still there. He hadn't torn down the poster or removed the sneakers, letting them remain there as symbols. Symbols of what? He wasn't certain. Looking wistfully at the poster, he pondered the damaged words. "Do I dare disturb the universe?" The usual corridor pandemonium surrounded him, slamming locked doors, wild yells and whistles, pounding feet as the guys hurried to the after-school activities. Football, boxing, debating. Do I dare disturb the universe? Yes, I do. I think.